Sometime in 1947, an inmate at the Sapporo prison in Japan managed to dig his way out of a prison cell that had been specially designed to hold him in, using nothing but miso soup bowls. This inmate was none other than Yoshi Shiratori, and his escape from Sapporo prison cemented his position in history as the man that no prison could hold. Today's story is about Yoshi Shiratori, a man whose prison break escapades would put Michael Schofield's talents to shame. In the next few minutes, I will reveal how this man escaped prison a total of 4 times, with each escape proving to be deadlier than the one before. Yoshi Shiratori was born on the 31st of July in the year 1907 in Aomori, Japan. His parents' identity remains shrouded in mystery, but some sources report that Shiratori was only 2 years old when his father passed away. The untimely demise of his father condemned Shiratori to a life of penury. He was adopted by a couple who ran a tofu shop, and as soon as he came of considerable age, he was brought into the shop to work. By the time he was 21 years old, Shiratori had married and started his family, but he continued to struggle financially. Providing for his wife and 3 children proved to be more and more difficult, and so eventually he decided to leave the tofu trade behind and venture into the fishing profession. Unfortunately for Shiratori, the business of catching crabs for sale didn't earn him the fortune he desperately desired, and so he switched professions a few more times before finally setting his sights on what he assumed would be his ticket to financial success: gambling. As the story goes, for many gamblers, Shiratori soon lost all his money to gambling and ran into huge debts. When it was time to repay his debts, he had no other choice but to turn to robbery to get the money. The repercussions of Shiratori's decision to turn to a life of crime soon came knocking, and was first arrested for robbery gone in 1933 at the age of 25. During the robbery, things took a dark turn when Shiratori and his partner fatally injured a man. The pair managed to escape the scene without getting captured and remained in hiding for the next 2 years. Shiratori was eventually captured when his partner in crime was apprehended and coerced into giving up his location. After being arrested, Shiratori was taken into custody, where he was forced to confess to robbery and murder. In 1936, he was thrown into the Aomori prison, which was a worse condition than his previous struggle with debt. The first few months in prison are always the hardest, and this applied to Shiratori. However, he was not the average man, and immediately started to cook up a plan. Shiratori held on to his plan with tenacity, overlooking the harsh conditions in prison and enduring several months of solitary confinement. During his time in solitary confinement, Shiratori started the first phase of his plan, which involved studying the prison guards and their routine. He soon discovered that there was a 15-minute gap in every patrol change. After months of carefully studying the guards, Shiratori moved on to the next phase of his plan, which was freeing himself from the prison. He soon got his hands on a metal wire which he obtained from a bath bucket that he had been given previously. He turned the metal wire into a lockpick, which he used to unlock his cell and free himself. Before walking out into the streets as a free man, Shiratori played a fast one on the guards by placing floorboards on his bed to make it seem as though he was still fast asleep in bed. Just like that, Shiratori had achieved freedom, which is something most prisoners could only dream about. But his freedom was short-lived. 3 days after his escape, he decided to go into a hospital to gather supplies he needed to survive. But that led to his arrest. This time, Shiratori was sentenced to life in prison for his previous escape and attempted theft. In 1942, he was moved to Akita prison, which was considerably worse than the prison he had escaped from. Not only was he locked up in a prison with worse conditions, Shiratori was also placed in a cell specifically created to hold people who have escaped or tried to escape from prison at some point. To stop these escape artists from ever reenacting their escapes, the cell was made with smooth copper walls, high ceilings, and one small window. The smooth copper walls were almost impossible to climb up, but Shiratori's will to escape was so strong that he refused to be deterred. After several failed attempts to go up the wall and reach the window, he finally succeeded. Now, in a position to take a closer look at the window, he discovered that the wood around its bars was beginning to rot, and that became his target escape route. Every night, Shiratori would painstakingly climb up the wall and work to loosen the vent. He continued this routine for a while until he could break the rotted wood and open the window. Although he had found a way out of the prison, Shiratori couldn't leave immediately, as he had one more hurdle to cross. He was a smart man, and so he knew that even if he made it out through the window undetected, he would have to walk across the prison's roof on his way out, and the guards would easily hear his footsteps. Not willing to take any chances, Shiratori remained behind bars, patiently waiting for the right moment to escape. His opportunity came on a stormy night, and he took it, knowing that the sound of the storm would cloak the sounds of his footsteps on the roof. On that stormy night, Shiratori successfully escaped and went into hiding. After spending 3 months in hiding, he unexpectedly showed up at a prison guard's house to ask for help. The guard, known as Kobayashi, was the only person who had treated Shiratori with respect during his time in Akita prison. For this reason, Shiratori chose to visit him to seek help in a case against injustice in the Japanese prison system. Alarmed by the situation, the guard invited Shiratori in under the guise of helping him. But when Shiratori went to use the bathroom, he quickly seized the opportunity to alert the authorities. When the authorities arrived at the scene, Shiratori was arrested once again and sent to prison, where he remained for several months. In the winter of 1943, he was transferred to Abashiri prison, located in northern Hokkaido. On entering the facility, Shiratori was kept in an open cell which exposed him to the chilling cold of winter. His condition was made worse by the fact that all he had on was light-weighted summer prison wear, which did nothing to protect him from the cold. The prison guards in Abashiri prison were very cruel, and they quickly fell into the habit of beating Shiratori every time he tried to stand up. When he got fed up with the inhumane treatment he was getting, Shiratori angrily made a vow that he would escape the prison at whatever cost. In his anger, he broke his handcuffs in the presence of some prison guards, leaving them in awe. Since the guards had seen firsthand that regular handcuffs were no match for Shiratori, special handcuffs were made for him. The cuffs were designed to be so complex that it would take 2 hours for it to be opened by a specialist. The specialist was required to visit the prison once a week to open the cuffs so Shiratori could take a bath. What the guards didn't know was that not even their new creation could hold Shiratori. Every time he was given food, Shiratori would pour a bit of salty soup on the handcuffs and on the food slot through which the food was passed into his cell. He continued doing this until both the cuffs and the food slot corroded and could easily be broken. In August 1994, Shiratori freed himself a third time by dislocating his shoulders to enable him slip through the narrow food slot on his cell door. The prison was experiencing a wartime blackout at the time, so it was easy for him to leave undetected. Shiratori found shelter in an abandoned mine deep in the mountains and lived there for 2 years before going to live in a nearby village. He was, however, arrested again after stabbing a farmer during an altercation. He claimed that he only stabbed the man in self-defense, but due to his reputation as a notorious criminal and wanted fugitive, no one believed his claims. When the day of reckoning came, Shiratori was sentenced to death for murdering the farmer and his multiple prison breaks. While awaiting his execution, he was placed in Sapporo prison, where his cell was specially designed with very high ceilings and tiny windows. The guards at Sapporo believed that the cell was good enough to hold the escape artist, and so they didn't bother with putting him in handcuffs. The prison authorities realized their mistake in 1947 when they discovered that Shiratori had crawled out of the prison through a tunnel. He dug underneath the floorboards in his cell using soup bowls. He had been digging the hole for a while, right under their noses. This time, Shiratori enjoyed 1 year of freedom before an act of kindness from a police officer warmed his heart so much that he turned himself in to the authorities. His death sentence was revoked after the High Court of Sapporo reviewed his case and agreed that he murdered the farmer in self-defense. They also considered the fact that, in all his escapes, he had never hurt or killed any guard. In the end, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the totality of his crimes. Shiratori was imprisoned in Tokyo on his request, and he remained there for 14 years until 1961, when he was released 6 years early for good behavior. Shiratori walked out of his Tokyo prison a truly free man and went back to his family in Aomori. There he worked odd jobs to support the family for the next decade. He eventually died in 1979 at the age of 71 as a result of a heart attack. Although nearly a century has passed, tales of Shiratori and his prison breaks continue to circulate, and he is now known in popular culture as the man that no prison could hold.